All right, this video is about basic music notation, formatting, and anatomy of notes. We're going to get started right away here and just run through this whole board setup. First thing you got to know is that the anatomy of a note, all notes have parts that we use specific terms to call on. So when you have just a whole note, that right there is called a note head. Not a head, not a note, it is a note head. Right here we've added a stem to our note head. So right here, we're gonna write stem. And now we have a half note. When we color in that note head, you can call it colored in versus open. This note head now belongs to an eighth note, so we have added a new part. This part right here is called a flag. Now that flag, very importantly, always blows in the wind the same direction that we read. So as we go across the page reading from left to right there, okay, that is the way the flag is blowing on the flagpole over here. So if I was to write this note upside down, so we have a stem down note, that means the flag is on that side of the note. That's very important. And when we have two eighth notes or something smaller, then we can group them together and add what is called a beam. Now that beam, you can imagine, is two eighth notes flags stretched together as a canopy across two poles. There you go. That is the anatomy of a note. The next thing you gotta know is when do we change directions with stems? So right over here, we have some examples. These stems right here are all going up. These stems right here are all going down. We are going to use stems up every time you have a note that is on or below the middle line of your staff. Likewise, you can have stems going down when your note heads are on or above the middle line of your staff. Now the reason for that is we want to save paper. Imagine back in the day when they were making paper out of, tree pulp, and it took a lot of money, and they were trying to write music down. Well, if you took this quarter note and you turned it this way, then the next line of staffing or the next set of text for lyrics would have to fit way down here in this space, right? But if I have my note head upright this way, well, then I can put lyrics or the next staff line starting much higher. And so we're trying to compress the amount of space that our music is taking up in order to save paper. So when you're on the middle line, you can choose either way. If you are going to beam two notes together, let's say I was going to beam this note and this note together, I would want the one that is not on the middle line to tell me which direction my stems would go. So because this one is going up, we would want to beam these two together here. It wouldn't make any sense to beam them diagonally this way. It would be very strange. It has been done in music notation, but don't do it. So we want to keep them going the same direction, and because this one can choose either or up or down, then this one determines which way it's going. So right here I have my stem down, I have a stem down, I can beam these two together. Now let's say I'm beaming three notes together. Well, I can say, well, in this group of three right here, these two are definitely saying stem down, therefore I can put all three stem down. But let's say I've got some competing ideas, all right? Let's put, let's do this one is up here. This one is one down. Well, that's kind of confusing because now I don't know which one to choose. This one says I should, oh no, this one says I should do stem up. This one should do stem up. But this one is way up high. Well, all I'm going to do is extend these up here to create a beaming group that is level. If I had one that was down here, let's erase this guy, down here, this one says I need stems down, oh sorry, this one says I need stems up, This one says I need stems down. Well, now you've got some severely competing ideas because you've got a neutral one, an up, and a down. In which case you want to say, well, this one is the farthest away from the center of the staff, so maybe that one needs to be the most importantly listened to. In which case I would change this to a stem down. I would extend this, and create a nice beam grouping. So there you go. When you look at rests have to be placed specifically in an area of the staff to be correct. So whole rests and half rests are both in the third space of the staff, but that is only when we are doing things by themselves. There's no other competing things happening within the staff. So we want these guys to always hang out in the third space. Whole, half. Half looks like a hat, therefore it is a half rest. Whole looks like a hole in the ground, therefore it is a whole rest. Our quarter rest should be centered around the middle line as well, and our eighth rest should be in the second and third spaces. Now, this does change if you're sharing a staff line with another instrument or voice. For example, let's say sopranos and altos are both reading on the same staff line. Well then, maybe the sopranos, let's borrow a note here, sopranos are getting a note, but the altos are getting a rest. So, I can put my note here in the soprano range, because stems up for sopranos, it's going to be a little bit backwards than what I just taught you here. And my altos are going to be reading this rest underneath it, in which case the rest would not be placed in the center of the staff. So just know that that sharing does change the rules. All right, over here we are getting into beats. So a beat unit is when we're talking about the numbered counts in your beats. We've got beat unit is when you've got 1, 2, 3, etc., etc. Beat division is when you're going to break it down in half. So 1 and 2 and 3 and etc., etc. Beat subdivision on top of that breaks it down in half again. So 1, this half of 1 becomes 1E. This half and becomes and a. 1E and a, 2E and a, 3, etc., etc. We're going to get more into that when we talk about simple meters in the next video. When to beam notes together. This is really important. You have to beam them in the correct groupings so that the eyes have a very quick, generalized sense of where your beat units are. So if I was going to have, oh, this is a bad marker. Let's go peek. If I was going to have a quarter note, an eighth note, an eighth note, and a quarter note, and a quarter note in one measure. To my eyes, this looks like I have 5 beats when I'm going very, very quickly sight reading. Obviously, it's not 5 beats because the 2 of them are 8 notes, but it makes more sense for our eyes to group things together. So if I take my 2 flags right here and I beam these 8 notes together, now what I see is 1 group, 2 groups, 3 groups, 4 groups. And I can say, ah, here are my 4 beats. This is really, really important for quickly assessing what is happening in a measure and where your counts are going to be as things get more complicated. There are times when you do not want to beam things together because it may look funny and it would make more sense to separate them, or you cannot beam them together because there's like a rest in the middle and things like that. But for the most part, what you want to do is be able to see your beat unit across the page for whatever beam groupings you can do. And that's the end of this video.